What's up, guys? Lance, Obscure Movie Guy, coming to you once again with another fun-filled, fact-filled video that you probably won't care about, trying to change the world one post at a time. And because it is the talk of the town, the holiday is upon us, we've got to talk about Halloween Ends. Generally, I don't do things that are so mainstream, but I did do a movie review over the summer for The Batman, which turned out to be a good movie and not such a bad review in my opinion. But I don't think I've ever seen such a controversial movie that is so love it or hate it than Halloween Ends. So today we're going to talk all things Halloween and Michael Myers. So, Halloween Ends. What a controversial movie that was, in many ways. And I've read a lot of things, I've watched a lot of things, and I am going to be honest with you. I already pretty much knew most of the movie going into this. I sat back, I didn't watch it until this past week, and I had already heard and read and seen a lot of different reviews from a lot of different people, and again, very love it or hate it. Some people think it's the best film in the franchise. Some people absolutely despise it. There's a petition online to people signing their signatures to have the movie reshot and redone because they didn't like the way it ended. But I gotta be honest with you. After reading everything and seeing a lot of stuff, I didn't have high hopes for the movie going into it. Not that I was biased, but to be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't that impressed with Halloween Kills the way it left off. So then we go into Halloween Ends, and man, I mean, the general consensus on the internet is
that is one big pile of shit.
but I do not necessarily agree with that. Now, I will say this movie definitely has its problems. By no means is this a top 10 or even a top 100 for me. To be fair, horror's not necessarily my thing, but I do respect the franchise and what it started, especially the first film back in 1978, the original Halloween from John Carpenter. That being said, let's take a look at a couple different things that have people so upset. Number one being Michael Myers was not in the movie enough. Now, I've read a lot of things where people are saying that Michael Myers basically takes a back seat in this movie. He is a side character to his own film. You know, he shows up very late in the movie. There's not enough screen time. Let's take a look, though. Generally, Michael Myers does not have a lot of screen time to begin with. I think we can all agree between not just this one, but even if you look back 1978 and 2018, there's not a lot of screen time for the character to begin with. Now, his presence is felt throughout all of those films pretty much on a consistent basis. But overall time on screen, usually somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes total time. And to try and give everybody a little bit of a comparison to that, if you go back to 1977 Star Wars, Darth Vader had such a huge impact, but realistically, Darth Vader was one of those characters where his presence was felt throughout most of the film, but realistically, Darth Vader's only got about 10 to 12 minutes of screen time in Star Wars. So I can't necessarily agree with everybody on that. Michael Myers wasn't in the film enough. He wasn't in the film really any less than he's been in some of the other films. And, I mean, I can see what they're trying to say, and I'm going to justify it in a little bit. Another thing that people were complaining about was the introduction of a new character, i.e. Corey. Again, so this movie does have its issues. Now, Corey being a new character, it is kind of odd for a franchise or a trilogy to introduce a main character in the last film. I'm sure it's been done in other occasions. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's not something that's completely out of the norm. Now, a lot of people felt that this movie was kind of filmed as two different things. A film that was focusing on Corey, and then another film in its own right that was focusing on Michael Myers. It's almost like they had a Michael Myers movie with no beginning, and then they had a Corey movie with no end. And they were like, you know what? Let's smash them together and make a flick. And to a certain degree, it does kind of feel that way. But I also kind of feel like it did work a little bit. Yeah, Corey is a new character, but, you know, it's kind of weird. You know, how do I want to put that? Like, Corey isn't a bad guy. He had something tragic happen to him. And I guess it's kind of like the Joker always said.
Y'all could go insane with just one bad day.
So, there's the whole Corey thing. We're going to circle back to that because I'm going to show you how Corey played a more intricate part in this movie than people want to give Corey credit for. But another thing that people were complaining about was there is a lack of knowing with this movie, and there's a lack of knowing with the character Michael Myers in and of itself. So take Halloween Ends off the table for a hot second, and then look at Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and Halloween 1978. And there's not a lot that we know about Michael Myers, aka The Shape, to begin with. It's Laurie's brother, and that's really kind of all we know. We don't know what made him snap one day. We don't know why he kills. Realistically, there's no motive other than to just kill. It's not like he has any type of specific MO. Obviously, weapon of choice is a butcher knife. But he'll kill you with anything that he can get his hands on, really. But there's not a lot known about Michael Myers to begin with. So, searching for answers, I don't think we were going to get them to begin with. And there's still some unanswered questions that realistically do leave the franchise open to continue in a certain fashion. And I'm going to circle back to that as well. But as it stands, Michael Myers, we don't know a lot about to begin with. We were never going to know a lot about. But some of the things that people were focusing on was, you know, it's been 4 years since Halloween Kills. He's been living in a sewer. And people, you know, there's the remedial things. You know, why is he there? How did he survive? I don't know if he's eating rats or if he's just, you know, eating people that he kills in the sewer. Now, there is a novelization for Halloween, which actually does go into depth a little bit on the book side. And in the book, and I actually picked this up from my buddy Brad on his podcast, but in the book, he's actually living underneath of a like a meat packing plant and eating scraps of meat from the butchered animals, and that's what, you know, gives him substance. Obviously, they don't go into anything like that in the movie, but you know, leaving off where Halloween Kills is, and you get this sense Laurie is basically saying that he is the personification of evil and, you know, basically on the brink of supernatural. If he is a supernatural being, maybe he doesn't need to eat. You know, so that being said, you know, there's a lot of people that wanted to know why he was there, where he's been, what he's been doing. He's still been killing. And again, in the novel, he's been killing on a pretty regular basis. But they don't really show that in the movie. But you do get hints in, you know, bits and pieces of it. You know, a couple of little, you know, parts. If you listen to the radio broadcast close enough, they talk about, you know, some missing people. There's a girl on a billboard, you know, that's been missing since, you know, a couple years ago. And that's obviously a link to, well, she's missing because she's dead and Michael Myers killed her. So it's not that he hasn't been killing, but he hasn't been killing as frequently. And it would appear that with the less frequency of killing, that maybe he has lost his powers a little bit. This is where Corey comes into play. When Corey finally confronts Michael Myers with a victim, basically handing him a victim, you see Michael Myers stab him and kind of, gets all uppity about it, and it seems to give him a little bit more energy and, a little bit more power, and then he starts getting into it, and, I don't know if that's actually giving him power, if he just really likes stabbing people in the chest. I mean, they can go hand in hand. So, there's that. But the Corey and Michael relationship is really interesting, and this is where I take a different turn in the whole introducing a new character and it being two different films. My wife actually brought this to my attention, and she has a very astute observation when it comes to watching TV shows and movies. She is very good at picking things apart, and she brings up a good thing that I've been actually kind of played on in my head a little bit. So Corey is a new character that's been introduced here at the end, but for good reason. So, and I haven't read any of the director's notes. I don't know if this is actually what they were aiming for, but this is how I've interpreted the film with the help of my wife. She basically brings us up like, this is the end of the franchise. This is essentially the end of Michael Myers. Like, we're not going to get Michael Myers as we know him again. We shouldn't. We really shouldn't. So, a couple of things to look at with Corey. One, yeah, he might have had a couple of bad days, and he wants to learn from Michael. And then, obviously, at one point, he takes Michael's mask and basically becomes Michael Myers for a short part of the film. And this is where the film, as my wife puts it, becomes kind of like a tribute to the character. The highest form of flattery, they say, is imitation. And Corey is basically taking this mask, puts on a set of overalls, and plays the part of Michael Myers, wanting to be that character. He is, it's basically a tribute to Michael Myers, and if the highest form of flattery is imitation, then Corey did a great job. If you look at Michael Myers in the physical sense of a person, and you complain that we didn't get enough Michael Myers in the film, well, maybe you didn't get enough of Michael Myers in a personal sense as the person or the character. But if you take a step back and you look at it from more of a supernatural standpoint, kind of like Halloween Kills was trying to lead you into, well, Michael Myers he's not a person. He's
I'm an idea.
And if you go with the whole he's an idea, then it becomes more of a sense of being for the character than just being a guy. And I think that's what the movie's trying to convey. Michael Myers, obviously, to a lot of horror fans, is larger than life. And I think the film's trying to convey that in their little cinematic universe, he is larger than life, and he is not a person. And Corey is paying tribute to that character, as it seems the director is trying to do as well. So, and even towards the end of the film, I think it's I think the end of the film is very fitting in that sense. So if you dissect from when Laurie finally does kill Michael Myers, and they strap him to the roof of the car and they drive him through town, and now all of a sudden you've got this giant, parade basically of him. It's if you look at it from the movie, this is the neighborhood, this is the town's closure to everything that has happened to them over the last 40 years. And they're basically showcasing, in a sense, that Michael is dead. Here's his body as we, show him off through the streets that he's dead. And then they get to the end and basically, carry him almost as a hero to what is going to be essentially his final resting place. And if you don't believe me, check this out. Halloween, Spider-Man 2. Let me know what you think. So, in a sense, the townspeople are carrying him off and getting their closure when realistically what's happening is the director's basically carrying the character off as this fabled, hero to his final resting place. Again, paying tribute to the character that was Michael Myers. That's really what this movie's about. It's one giant tribute to a character for the last 40 years, and the last, 4 that this team of writers and directors has put their energy into, and they're giving him kind of like a proper send-off. For what it's worth, yeah, they grinded him up into teeny tiny pieces, basically into dust and bone. But I mean, is that really any different than, Luke Skywalker cremating Darth Vader at the end of A New Hope? I mean, or Return of the Jedi, I should say. Again, you've got this giant villain that was taking over the galaxy, and yeah, Michael Myers didn't have a change of heart at the very end, but, Darth Vader always going to be remembered as the bad guy, yet Luke's still kind of giving him a hero's death and cremating him. And, Darth Vader may have been burnt to ashes. Michael Myers is grinded up into tiny little bits. I mean, it's one and the same. The movie is a tribute to the character, plain and simple. Now, that's not to say the movie's infallible. It does definitely have its issues. There are certain scenes in the movie that were just unnecessary or should have been expanded on with a little bit more explanation. Perfect example is when Laurie goes to see Corey's mother. That scene, as it is, and I watched the version on Peacock, so I don't know if the theatrical version was any different, and I'm sure that maybe there are some deleted scenes that will be available on the DVD, but that scene between Laurie and Corey's mother at Corey's mom's house was unnecessary. It lasted 30 to 45 seconds. There was about 2 lines spoken between the two characters, and then that was it. And Laurie, I mean, you kind of get a sense of why she's there. I don't want Corey dating my daughter. Well, your daughter would be lucky to be with a guy, like Corey. And it's like, there should have been more conversation there to give that scene a little bit more substance, or just leave it out altogether because it didn't add anything to the movie. We know Laurie doesn't like the dude. We don't need to go confront his mother. And Corey's mother's a weird whack job to begin with. And that's another thing that was brought up a lot online, was people complaining about Corey's mother, and like at one point gives him a kiss on the lips, and that's a little weird. And I think that just was trying to showcase the weirdness of his mother, clearly overprotective, and nothing is good enough for her son. And that's fine. But I think they went a little over the top with it, and it didn't come off very well. And then there's another scene in particular that people seem to have a huge problem with was when Corey confronts Michael in the sewer and takes his mask. And at this point, this is when, Corey gets the mask and basically becomes Michael Myers for a little while and goes on a killing spree of his own. Now, I can see why people have a problem with this scene. Michael Myers is supposed to be big and bad, and Corey outmuscles him relatively easily and takes the mask. And yeah, that is kind of crap, because it was just the night before that Michael was holding a girl up against the wall and stabbing her. Literally holding her up with his hands. So, what happened in that 12 hours that he was strong enough to pick up a chick and hold her against the wall, and now Corey can overpower him? That scene probably could have gone in a different direction. And I think if they would have done like a passing of the torch, so to say, Michael passing the mask along to Corey, would have been a little bit more interesting. At least for me, but regardless of that, the only other thing that really sucks is that it didn't make a whole lot of sense earlier in the movie when Laurie and Corey are arguing. Corey states, talking about Laurie's granddaughter, that if I can't have her, no one can. And then he goes and kills a bunch of people that really don't have anything to do with Laurie's granddaughter. And that's fine. But then when it comes down to Corey's death, spoiler alert, Corey states it again, if no one can have her, then I'm going to stab myself in the neck. It's like, okay, so it wasn't but a day before you were saying nobody can have her, and you were going to kill a bunch of people about it. And now you're saying if nobody can have her, then I'm not going to have her and kill myself. Again, it was a poorly written scene. It's one of those things, like, if he was going to die, he should have just died at the hand of Laurie to begin with and not stabbing himself. I see what they tried to do there. Laurie didn't do it, but they wanted to make it look like she did when the granddaughter walked in, and it's this whole big misunderstanding. And it's like they didn't even play on that misunderstanding enough. Laurie's granddaughter was like, you did it, and then walks out the door. It's like, okay, so whatever. They didn't play on that very much. Laurie's granddaughter comes back, helps save the day. So, and ultimately, yes, Michael did kill Corey, but he, stabs himself in the neck. Nobody would have survived that. He would have bled out far before Michael ever got there. And realistically, I don't know. I don't know if the scene would have been any better without the dialogue or not. But, excuse me. That's my take on that. So, again, the movie's got its issues. It's not perfect, but I think, if you look at it from the way that my wife kind of showed me and start thinking about it, it is a tribute film to the character. This is very much done in the same type of sense as some fan films. They just want to showcase the character killing people. And that's what they did. So, I'm surprised that I like the movie more than I thought I would. Because Halloween's not my thing. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of horror. I respect the genre, and I respect Halloween, especially the original version, for what it's done for the genre and the types of movies that was influenced from it. Without Halloween, you don't get Jason, and you don't get Freddy, and you probably don't get Scream. And those are some big franchises. So, but Michael Myers, done and gone. I will say that, there was some other complaints about, and they did kind of do this, that they touted this, I think my buddy Brad said it best, like this steel cage death match, between Laurie and Michael, and the fight itself at the end was not bad, but I think the movie could have done a little bit more with that particular fight scene. Maybe, maybe not, I don't want to say drag it out a little bit longer, because I don't want fight scenes to be drawn out, But if there was a little bit more build up between those two characters to begin with. But the one thing that you don't see at the end of the movie, well, that's not true, because they grind him up. They grind him up. You know, there was at one point where you could possibly, you know, like, there's been talk of like trying to continue it, but like, how would you continue that franchise? And you grind them up, you throw them in the trash, and there's no coming back from that. And, you know, I think the mask was, you know, if the mask was the thing that gave him the power, that would have been kind of cool for them to play on, because the mask, you know, could have gone to, you know, it worked with Corey. When Corey had it, you know, he felt invincible, and they made him basically Michael Myers for a little bit of the movie, and that was kind of cool. And, I don't know. The mask could have been the thing that was giving Michael his powers. It could have given Corey his ability. And with both of them dead, the mask could have gone on to, you know, influence somebody else. Because realistically, you know, they talk about Halloween Kills. They talk about at the end, you know, how he's the personification of evil and supernatural. And you get a little bit of that sense in Halloween 2018 when Michael's locked up. And, you know, Dude Man pulls out the mask, and, you know, he kind of, there's this energy within the other, you know, inmates that, you know, they can feel the energy. Like, I'm thinking the mask could have been, you know, what was giving him his power. And it would have been kind of cool if they would have gone on to explain if that was the case or how it became that way. You know, kind of like Jim Carrey's mask. The mask brings out your innermost whatever. And for Michael Myers, he wanted to be a bad guy, just like the bad guy in the mask. So can they continue with this franchise? I don't know. But all in all, not the best movie in the world, but it was a lot better than I thought it was. I would give it probably a solid 6 out of 10. And I could sit down and probably watch this one again. So I will say my wife's biggest gripe was the special effects for the movie. And I think the one that probably turned her off the most was when Michael Myers beats the DJ to death, breaks his jaw and cuts his tongue out, because I see what they were trying to do there, but it didn't look great. It didn't look great. It didn't look very good. So she's thinking with some of the, you know, with the technology that we have and how far we've come since the 70s, and even with CGI, you probably could have done a little bit better with that scene. But it was kind of funny having his tongue cut out and skipping the record. So, but guys, that's my take on Halloween Ends. And I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. And tell me what you think about any of my theories or anything like that. Did you guys hear anything different? Read anything different? And I am not signing the petition. Halloween Ends is fine the way it is. Again, not a great movie, but not as horrible as a lot of the people on the internet are making it out to be. Is it the best in the franchise? I don't know. Me, I'm a little bit more partial to the original and the 2018 version, bringing them back. So, but that's my take. Like, subscribe, and comment to the YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook, Reddit, Tumblr, and I will see you guys in the next video.